Hi everyone, thanks so much for listening to another episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. I'm Vic Cundiff and I'll be your host for the show. Before we bring on tonight's guest, if you've had a Dogman encounter and would like to speak with me about it, whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. I'd love to hear from you. If you've had a Sasquatch sighting and would like to be a guest on Bigfoot Eyewitness Radio, please go to bigfooteyewitness.com and submit a report. All right, let's bring on tonight's guest. Tonight's guest is Dawn. Dawn, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Vic. I love your show. Thank you for what you do.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on the show. We appreciate your time. Dawn, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
Well, I'm a mother of two. Both my kids are in their 20s. They live in Kansas City, and they're both doing fantastic. And I'm a veteran of the United States Army, 24 years as a reservist. 10 of that was active. I've been on 3 combat tours, Iraqi Freedom 4, Iraqi Freedom 5, and most recently Operation New Dawn, also in Iraq. And I started my career as a medic, enlisted, and ended my career as a public affairs officer as a major. So I made field grade. Now I live near and work on a Native American reservation as a school teacher. And I don't want to name that particular tribe just because tribal politics and all of that gets kind of complicated, and I don't want to assume that they're endorsing what I'm saying. So anyway, but I find it an honor to work with Native and Indigenous peoples, and that is a adventure every day. So I'm in my fabulous 50s, and that's about it.
That's quite a long career in the military. Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you. Yes, I'm very blessed to have served in the military. It sure took me a lot of, well, when you're in the military, you go places you never thought you would go. You do things you never thought you would do. You wear things you never thought you would wear.
Do you think your time in the military might have helped you a little bit when it came to dealing with your Dogman encounters?
Definitely, because as a combat medic, back then we were 91 B-10s combat medics. We went through Fort Sam Houston, and of course you deal with trauma and crisis, and that's part of the training. The medic can't lose focus. And then, of course, going through officer candidate school, which was intense for anybody out there who went through OCS. And then, of course, serving as a commander. I've had 4 commands in my career. And so you have to keep a very level head, especially when you have a wartime command. My last command was a wartime command. And so, yes, definitely. I mean, in the military, you learn not to react, which when you hear my encounter, I think when we discussed it in the pre-interview, you were a little surprised at my lack of reaction, but that's my training. You don't react, you assess. So yes, definitely.
Well, I'm glad you handled it so well. Yeah, any advantage you can get going into Dogman encounters, it's a good thing. So, yeah, I'm glad you had that advantage on your side. You told me in the pre that you were never interested in cryptids before you had your encounters. After having your encounters, have you become interested in them?
Oh, it's crazy. And that kind of comes off of something that happened this summer, which is more Sasquatch related. But that is what led me to your show, because I had an experience this summer which was unexpected. But now I've just been fascinated. So for the last 4 or 5 months, all I do is listen to Dogman Encounters Radio and Sasquatch Radio. And so, yes, I never, ever, and to understand that, you have to understand some of my background. I've always been interested in the paranormal. I mean, extremely interested. But my paranormal research has always been in the fields of ufology and magic, and I guess you'd call the paranormal. So, the cryptid event or the cryptid stuff has just never grabbed me, but man, it's grabbed me. So now I'm telling you, I don't think I've listened to every show you put out, but I've come pretty close. I love Dogman Encounters, and I can't even explain why.
Well, I'm so glad you found out about the show. Thank goodness for that. While you haven't always been into cryptids, you just mentioned your interest in UFOs. With that in mind, do you think there's any connection between dogmen and UFOs the way some people claim there is?
Oh, God, yes. If you think about George Knapp and the search for the skinwalker, and that's another thing I wanted to tell you because we didn't cover it in the pre, but I had an experience on the res, which is definitely dogmen related on some level. So we could come back to that. But, when you look at the whole phenomenon, the whole paranormal phenomenon, you notice that, with Sasquatch sightings, there's lights. And I think, the search for the Skinwalker and George Knapp and the work they did on the Skinwalker Ranch there with the science teams, a NIDS team, I think they called them, if I recall. But anyway, you had all these things. They had, the ancient wolf that was there on the ranch. You had all these different cryptids and you had the lights and the portals. So somehow I think from Dogman to Sasquatch to lights in the sky and to, many other these paranormal things, somehow they all are orbiting a deeper mystery, which I do not even pretend to understand. But yes, I definitely think there's a connection.
Wouldn't that be something if they were all connected somehow?
I really believe they are. And, since our pre-interview, I was thinking about origins of Dogman and some of the things that we had discussed, because another thing I did not include in the bio, but will be of interest to the listeners, I believe, is to understand my religious paradigm's a little different. I've practiced what people would call Wicca for a very long time, and I'm ordained in that practice. And when you are an earth-based religion, you don't really have a dogma. That's kind of ironic. You don't have a dogma. You just are more of a mystical experiencer. And so you do ritual, and then these various experiences present themselves. And when you are open like that, you see this interconnectivity between these things. Now, a lot of people, and I just want to say this because, a lot of my family's Christian and I have no hostility toward Christianity at all. So some people might think Wicca is somehow evil, but it is not. It has nothing to do with Satan or anything. It's not a dark art. It is just more of an earth-based religion. But having that as my religious foundation, you come to expect that some of these paranormal things, you just experience them. You don't react to them. You appreciate them. You might journal about them, but you don't bring any conclusion to them. But being in my fabulous 50s, I've experienced a lot of these things through my life, and I see there is some connection between them, Vic. There is just something. Now, that doesn't explain everybody's encounter and everybody's experience, but somehow I think there's something bigger behind it. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. If there is something bigger behind all of this, it really does make you wonder how big it is. But that's a conversation for another day.
Exactly. But just underpin a little bit on the UFOs, because this is not a UFO show, nor have I ever been on a UFO show. But what changed my life, well, the first awakening maybe, was in the third grade when I had an experience living in Boise, Idaho, where it would be kind of the classic abduction experience. It wasn't horrific, but it certainly was traumatic being just a third grader. But lights in the window and, the appearance or the presentation of other entities. And that changed me. And this is how it goes into Dogman. It goes into Wicca. So it's not totally off topic. Is after that experience, literally the next day, I was just fascinated with the paranormal. I came out of that. And a lot of people talk about you have these encounters. And I think so many of your guests talk about this, these encounters, they do change our lives. And a lot of times the Dogman encounters do not change people's lives for the better, but sometimes they do. I've listened to enough of your shows, but my encounter definitely made me more psychic. And I suddenly was just fascinated with seeing through the veil and seeing other realities. I don't know how to explain it because I'm trying to go back to a third grade mind, but I'm just telling you, that event definitely altered my trajectory in life.
In life, there are very few sure things, but yeah, if you have a Dogman encounter, it's a given. It's going to affect and change your life. There's no denying that.
Definitely. And I just think the fact that dogmen are out there is so intriguing. I mean, if anyone doubted that reality, listening to your show should put that argument to bed once and for all. And it is comforting. I listen to all these different encounters and all these credible people from all these different walks of life. And it just kind of makes you exhale and say, I know I've passed all the psych exams in the military and my top secret, and all that. But it's nice just to hear other people that are sane as rain and they've had these encounters. And it does give you a sense of community. I would actually like to go someplace to meet some of these people personally.
Yeah, it would be nice if we could put together some kind of a get-together where all the eyewitnesses who have been on the show could come together and talk and compare notes, but yeah, the logistics of that would be a nightmare. All right, Don, please tell us about your encounters now. Give us every last detail that comes to mind.
Okay, to set the table on this, I have to do a little bit of work because to appreciate the encounter, you have to kind of understand where we were. Before I went to Iraq, I bought this property south of Butler, Missouri. And I don't want to give the exact location because people live there now and I don't want dogman enthusiasts showing up. I don't think they would appreciate that. But to understand this property, the house was condemned when I bought it. The property is absolutely beautiful. It has a pond. It's 10 acres, 3 acres of pasture, about 7 acres of rolling hills and heavily wooded. Some of the trees very old. There's a barn foundation which comes to play here soon. And this barn was so old that when they poured the silo, they made it into an octagon, and it's, odd shaped because they didn't have the skill to do a round thing. So they did it in various horizontal lines. And the foundation was sandstone and some very crude cement, just like the silo foundation was very crude cement. If you're standing on the front porch, which, we fixed up the house right before I went to Iraq, so it was habitable. Then I went to Iraq on Operation New Dawn. Then I came back home and both of my children moved in with me. So we're talking 2011 to 2012. But if you're standing on the front porch, 50 feet away, approximately, there's a dirt road. And on the other side of that is all Missouri wetlands. It's all locked up. There's no development. So all the way down to the rivers, like miles. They do some farming, but there's no development. And then if you look to the west, the road goes out into wetlands, probably about 3 miles where it eventually will go to frontage road and hook back up with Highway 49 running south. But that's just, there's nothing. There's no houses out there. There's just some fields and a lot of forest. To the north of the place was Rattlesnake Hill. And then eventually Butler, but there's no development. There's a power line is the only development. And then looking east, there's about 2 football fields worth of soybeans. And then there was one other little farm. So from my house, you could see one light. That's it. This place, people think of Missouri being really developed, but there's a lot of Missouri that is not developed. And this was not developed at all. So we were extremely secluded out there. And before we get to the encounter, the odd thing, and I did the research because in the pre-interview we talked about this and I looked at this and Definitely there's no timber wolves in that part of Missouri, nor has there ever been, but there's not any timber wolves near Missouri for 1,000 miles. But anyway, my son had purchased a brand new Jeep Wrangler 4x4. And so we had gone west of the house out there where the fields are and the wetlands are. And he was learning to shift and put it in 4-wheel drive. And he was having a lot of fun and all and on and on and on. So we're out there messing around and he's driving me back to the place. And there's this gray wolf. And this wolf is just casually walking down the dirt road toward us. Now, I grew up in Montana, not Missouri. I know what a wolf is because there are wolves here. You get up toward Glacier and that territory, and there are wolves. And I also did a tour in Alaska, which was called Operation Alaskan Road. Fantastic tour. But anyway, so I'm just looking at that. And David, of course, was just stunned. We're both staring at him. I'm like, that's a wolf. And at the time, I didn't know, but I said, I don't think there's wolves in southern Missouri. And the wolf just kind of lowered his head and sauntered by. And we just sat there spellbound. We were just like, did we really see that? And he just walked off. It made no reaction, and it seemed like it belonged there. And it was not very interested in us. But it passed so close, he could have rolled down his window and petted it because it walked right by the Jeep and then moved on down the road and then moved off into the tall grass and disappeared. So we went back and we didn't think too much about it, but it was odd. And again, until we talked, I didn't really look on a map to see if wolves are in that part of Missouri, but I didn't think they were, and they certainly are not. So anyway, that and this encounter are somehow related, and I can't tell you how. But about the encounter, there are coyotes out there. Now, I never saw them until the night of the encounter, but I heard them a lot. And so we would be outside, and there's a lot of owls, and the kids and I got pretty good at making owl sounds, and the owls would hoot, and we would hoot, and they'd kind of figured out that we weren't owls, and they'd drop off one by one. But normally we'd play that game a lot. And there's a lot of course, deer in that country, and I had probably 100 turkey that lived on my property, unroosted on my property. Now, I'm a vegetarian, so all this stuff knew it was safe around me. And so there's a lot of wildlife, but we would hear the coyotes. And there would be nights they would kind of howl and yip and make all their strange little coyote noises. But they never really were that close to the place. Oh, we also had bobcats. But anyway, but this night, David was gone. He was living with me at the time. Abby had already left, and she'd moved back to Kansas City at this point. We're probably talking 2014-ish. And David was gone, and I was sleeping on the couch in the living room, and I got up, and this coyote noise was just ridiculous. It was like in stereo. It sounded like there was 1,000 coyotes all over the place. And I got up and I was annoyed. Okay. I was just annoyed because I was like, you have thousands of acres out here to do whatever coyotes do. You don't need to be doing it around my house at 1 or 2 or 3 in the morning, whatever it was. I didn't look. I just got up and I was just annoyed. And so the living room is next to it was kind of a family room. It's an odd little house, but the big family room next to the living room. And the living room had the door out to the front porch. So I got up off the couch and put a blanket on and went to the porch with the idea of yelling at coyotes and making them go do whatever they were doing somewhere else. So I step out on my porch. Now, the only light out there, other than the very distant light from the other farm on the other side of the soybean fields, is my country street light, whatever you call it, the big halogen bulb that they give you if you're rural. And so there's one light outside. That's it. And it makes a sphere of golden light. And I'm standing on my porch, and this light is illuminating the front yard and the fire pit that we'd built and just barely illuminating where the barn is, which is to the west. So I turned toward the barn because this is where the coyotes are. And this is what I saw. And this is just so odd because the whole thing was just odd before even before I noticed the dogman. Because these coyotes were all running in a circle, counterclockwise. I mean, not neatly. They weren't organized. They're coyotes, but they were roughly all kind of running around in a circle. And I just looked over there and I just thought, what the unheaven? What are they doing? And then, because they were running around now, so I'm up on a porch. The porch is probably 6 feet higher than the ground level. The ground slopes down to where the barn is. So the barn is probably 20 feet away, 25. I mean, there's no barn. This is the foundation of the barn. But the barn is probably 25 feet away. So it is right on the periphery of where this light shines. And I could see these coyotes all running in a circle. And like I said, I'm just thinking, what are they doing? And I look over there, and there are these two figures standing in that, because the rest of this thing is inky black. I understand the night out there, unless it's a full moon, and unlike a lot of other people, there was no moon this night. It was dark. And I look over there, and I see a set of red eyes. I know that's different because most people see amber eyes. They were red, might have just been catching the glow from this orange light, but they were red. And I see these red eyes, and they're towering above the coyotes. And I just freeze. I'm just like, what? And then I see the figure, and I couldn't see the legs because, see, the foundation of the barn was dug out of the side of the hill. So the thing was standing in that. So I couldn't see his legs. What I could see is his upper body, and it's very typical to Dogman Encounters. I mean, it was V-shaped, very muscular, very hairy, very black. And the face, he's looking right at me. So, I can't give you how long the muzzle was because I didn't get a profile. I got it was staring at me, and I'm staring at him, and I just see the eyes. I could see the ears with the little tufts, and that's one of the things, the details of a Dogman Encounters. I'm like, that's what I saw. Because I remember seeing that and thinking, well, that's kind of unexpected. And so the tall, pointy ears and the triangular face, I didn't see teeth, but I saw the eye shine, and then the broad shoulders and the extra long arms. And this creature was motionless. And I'm looking at it. I just froze. Like I said, don't react. So I'm just staring at this thing. But I'm not moving a muscle. It's not moving a muscle. Then I notice there's a second one. And I think that one's a she. And that's just a feeling. Because I couldn't see that one very much. But I could see a second pair of eyes shine maybe 10 feet behind the first one. Further down the slope. So her head would be about at his waist. So I didn't get a body view of this one, but it was definitely the same thing because the eyes were exactly the same, just farther away and not as bright. And I thought, this is what I thought. Now, to explain what I thought, you have to understand, and I'm not trying to drag UFOs into this because I have no UFO agenda, but on this property, over the years, we had a lot of UFO sightings. And a matter of fact, there's an interesting book called Weird Missouri. And in that book, it's either Strange Missouri or Weird Missouri. I'm not sure, but whatever. It's kind of a paranormal state by state. It's a whole series. I just read the Missouri one because I was living in Missouri. But there is a farm not too far from this one where UFO sightings are so common, they actually have UFO barbecues, and they all go watch the UFOs. Well, we had various UFO sightings, witnessed to up to 9 people. So my thought was at that moment, and I don't know why, and this is probably just so wrong. I'm just telling you, because you said, tell us what you're thinking. I thought, these guys, like, this is so stupid. But I thought, these guys are migrating to the UFOs. Okay, that's dumb. Okay, I dismissed that. But what I think is really true about it was, I think that Mr. Dogman and Mrs. Dogman were migrating, and these coyotes were traveling with them. Now, I think that's true. I think that's exactly what they're doing, and that's kind of substantiated by the following encounters. But I just froze, and I never thought about doing anything hostile to these dogmen. I didn't know they were dogmen at that time. I didn't know what they were. I just thought they were paranormal beings. In my little witchy brain, I thought, well, these are like paranormal, like lycanthropes, lichens, werewolves. These are paranormal beings, and these coyotes like them. And that's why they're circling them, because they're happy that these paranormal beings are with them. But I can tell you this, paranormal or not, they were flesh and blood. I mean, they were breathing. It was cool enough. You could see the steam, not only from the coyotes, but from them. They were here. You know, they weren't somewhere else projecting. They were here on this realm. Well, as I stated, I just froze and I thought, I'm not going to yell at these coyotes. You know, I'm not going to chase them off. I am going to go back inside. And I know that just seems illogical, but I literally just backed up through the door. I shut the door. I stood there probably for about 10 minutes listening to coyotes doing their thing. The dogmen didn't make any sounds. There was no like a howl or anything. It was just coyotes making their little noise, their loud noise. It was incredibly loud. But it started to die out, and then it got quieter, and then I went back and lay down on the couch and just put that in memory. I didn't even go back outside. I thought about it. I thought, well, maybe I should go outside and see if they're all just quiet. And I said, well, if they're all sitting out there quiet, I don't want to know. I like the idea that they have gone on to do whatever they wanted to do. And they were traveling from the north to the south. So they traveled out of there. And that is my first encounter. The next encounters are just really interesting. And I'm glad we had the pre-interview, because you've given me time to really try to unpack those bags. So you have to understand. So we're talking, that happened, and I could pretty well pin it down to late 2014, because that's when David got his new Jeep, and the Jeep was brand new, and he got it in the fall. So it's probably this time of year back then. Well, so David and I lived out there for another year and a half. Now, David was there, and Abby, when we had some UFO encounters. We also did this, and I won't get all off into this, but like I said, I have a very large paranormal life, and these dogmen are a part of it now. But we also did this whole ghost hunting thing because friends were really interested in paranormal activities that were going on our property. So they brought this team of ghost hunters out. I mean, amateur ghost hunters. And it was really fun. And they got really freaked out, and they closed down their investigation and went away. And one other thing, and this is germane, and I'll try to keep this really succinct for people that are not at all interested in old religions. But David, in a sense, had his own dogman encounter, but it was all paranormal. And I'll keep this really succinct because some people might be like, okay, whatever. But we were doing a ritual, which is classically called evocation, and we did it a lot. And the point of this is to contact helpful entities on the other side of the veil that can propel you toward some of your desires. And my daughter and my son and I were very good at this, and we were doing this frequently. And David, for some reason, now this would even be before we saw the wolf walking down the road. For some reason, he was connected to this whole wolfman lichen lycanthrope thing. Now, I didn't have an interest in it, but he would do this ritual, and he would tell me. Now, understand, my son, just to give him some credibility in case one might suspect there's drugs. We're both in the military. Okay, I got out 2 years ago, but while all of this was going on, I'm a field grade officer in the military. I get regular drug tests and psych evals. My son is still in the military. He's in military intelligence. And that's all I'm going to say about that, because I don't want to, do anything. So anyway, very credible individual, and works for, he's in the reserves like I always was. And, works for a very credible company in Kansas City. So total solid individual. But, also like his mother, a magical individual. And so he was connecting, and I just would stare at him because, it was his path, not mine. But he was connecting to these wolf men, and he even had a name for one of them. And he was saying that they were going to train him in the way of the hunt. And he was sharing these things with me. And I was kind of doing the mom thing. Watched a little too much Underworld, have we? But it was very serious to him. So I only say that because sure enough, they didn't show up physically to him. Well, he claimed there was one on the property. So I got to give him even more props. Again, you've kind of enabled me to think these things out. But he claimed there was one on the property that was a guardian. Now that goes into my experience. That's so odd. Now that was his claim, just his claim. I can't scientifically validate that. He never said other than, being in a intuitive state. But he was sure that we had a guardian. Now that is so interesting. So I'll just go to my encounters. We'll just push Dave off of this discussion. So after the Dogman migration with coyotes through my property, what would happen? And we're talking about a span of about a year and a half to 2 years before I decided, because David eventually moved in with his now wife, and now I have a grandbaby. She's amazing. So he left. But in that time span of him leaving and then me selling the property to the new lucky owners and moving back to Montana, this creature, the first time I noticed it, I went out on the back porch, and unfortunately, from time to time I smoke, and I was smoking a cigarette, underscore. And I was looking, and again, back to that light, the little sphere of light. That's the only light in this entire place. So I'm out there in the orange glow and on the front porch smoking a cigarette. And I look over, and there's this cedar tree right on the edge of the property. There's the gravel road I described, and there's wetlands on the other side. There's this cedar tree. I look over there, and there's this creature. And at first I thought, because it had a very muscular arm and it was holding on to this tree, and it was very high, and I thought, that is a really strong creature to be holding itself up, holding its body weight up by one arm hanging onto a tree. And then I kind of focused. I thought, no, stupid. It's just really tall. It's just standing there. And it's the same Dogman. And this is not the only time this Dogman would come and stand on the edge of the property. And he'd stand always by that tree. And he never did anything threatening. He never howled. He never made a sound. And the only time I ever saw this Dogman is when I would walk out at night. I never saw it during the day. And of course, I went over there during the day. I had to mow that whole place. Trust me. I went over there and did the scientific. It wasn't an optical illusion. It wasn't shadows. It wasn't, one of these things created by the light and the dark, yada, yada. No, I checked all those boxes. No, no, no. This was I believe just the feeling is the same Dogman, just the alpha. I never saw the coyotes. I'd hear the coyotes from time to time, but they never came on my property and did that thing that they did that night, ever. I never saw them. That's the only night I saw coyotes, was when they were with the Dogman. I heard them, but I never saw them around there. But he would just come and stand there, and he gave me the same look that he gave me that night, and I would go on the porch, and I would look back, and we would just look at each other. I can't explain it. And it was just like this quiet understanding. I didn't do anything hostile against them, and I think he appreciated that. And I know I told you this, being an officer in the military. Now, I'm not a gun girl. I just don't do that. But 24 years in the military, I know guns, and my son he's just the opposite. He's just a gun maniac. So on the property at that time, we had a Lee Enfield converted to a sniper rifle. We had a Mini 14. I had my Taurus 9.2 fixed iron sight, 9 Mike handgun. I had a 9mm carbine rifle, a crossbow, a machete. I'm not even telling you all the weapons we had out there. It was ridiculous. We had all these weapons on the property. It never even occurred to me, not on the night of the Dogman migration, not on any of these following nights, maybe the 5 or 6 times when he would just come and stand there. I never thought of doing anything hostile against this guy. And I think my reaction the first night, now, Vic, I could be totally off the chain on this. I don't know. But I think he liked it because I didn't do anything. They didn't do anything. Nothing happened. And I know this sounds strange, and it might just be a single person out there in the middle of nowhere. But I kind of found it comforting. I thought it was, I know this is going to sound really wrong, and I know it goes counterintuitive to all your people that have had horrifying experiences with Dogmen. And I totally believe them, and I think they are horrifying. And I wouldn't want any of those experiences they've had. But my experience, I thought it was kind of comforting. I just thought it was kind of cool. Like, he was checking in on me, kind of saying hi in his Dogman way. I know it just sounds ridiculous, but I'm only telling you the truth. And I would just look at him, and that was it. I never tried to talk to him. I didn't try to call him. I didn't try to feed him. No, I didn't do anything. He stood there. I would stand there. I'd finish my cigarette. I always backed up, though. I never turned my back to him because, they're very powerful and they're very fast. And I think they're magical. So I will say this. I never, ever turned my back to him. I would go out when I saw him. And of course, it was only like 5 or 6 times over 2 years. We're not talking every night I went out there. But I would go out on certain nights, and usually it was very dark. And I'd get this vibe. And I'd look over there, and there he was, standing by that tree, just staring at me. And then I would hurriedly finish my cigarette, back in the house, and let it go. So those are my following encounters. Like I said, not dramatic, just what happened.
You told us what they looked like, but how big would you say Mr. and Mrs. Dogman were?
That's a really good question. And I can scientifically answer it because I'm very familiar with that barn foundation because the people that owned the house before us dumped all their trash in it. So when I got the place, I rented one of those giant dumpsters, and me and the kids and their friends, we all dug all the trash out of that old barn foundation and put it in the dumpster. So I would say conservatively, and it also, I went to the tree, of course. I told you I went and did all the rational stuff to make sure the creature that came and stood by the tree was not some optical illusion, a branch and a bush and, and a shadow and all that nonsense. So I would say 7.5 feet. Her, I don't know, because she was further down the hill. And I don't even know if it was a her, but I just got the feeling it was. But he was big and not real, broad, but not like a refrigerator. More, as I've heard it before, but it's true, like a basketball player. Very broad in the shoulders, very broad in the chest, narrowed at the waist, and the strange non-human legs, which is why they're so fast, and the long arms. Now, I didn't see claws, but the times he stood at the tree and that night, his arms were forward and his hands or hands, they weren't paws, hands were curled. So I'm seeing the top of his palms. Does that make sense? So the claws were curled behind the big hand. So I'm sure he had them, but he didn't show them to me. And he didn't smile or do any weird stuff. He just stood there staring at me. He didn't smile or give me like a menacing grin or show teeth or show his claws. He just stood there. What it reminds me of is like, and this is again a feeling, an intuition. What it reminded me of was like he was saying to me, your move, your move. He was standing there. I mean, he was poised like he could shoot out of that foundation and do horrible things. But he was just standing there, kind of like a runner, just like your move. Well, my move was to just do nothing. I didn't make a move. I didn't do anything aggressive at all. I told you, I just stood there until I finally decided I'm just going to literally back into the house. I just put my butt on the door and pushed it open and backed into the house. So that was the feeling. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. How did the coats on Mr. and Mrs. Dogman compare to the coyotes' coats?
Okay, the coyotes, they're mangy and light colored. At least in that light, they were light colored. The dogmen were black. I mean, not black and silver, not striped, but some of these people get a lot of, and I think there's a lot of kinds of these dogmen. I think they're just like us. Those people are so different. I mean, God, I'm a 6'3" Amazon. I think dogmen are just as varied as we are. These two were black. Matter of fact, sometimes on some of your stuff, you have a picture of a very black dogman with red eyes. That is most like what I saw.
Yeah, that's an eerie thought. No matter how benign they acted, just seeing them poised to make any move, yeah, they had to be really over the top. But thank goodness the encounter turned out the way it did. I mean, you're not scarred from it, so I guess we could just play the glad game.
Exactly. But see, I think, having so much experience in the paranormal and also, as a practicing the old religion, your psychology is more open to the unexplainable because, the old religions dealt with that, just like native religions deal with that. It's just a comment. It's not an indictment against anybody's faith tradition. It's just the older religions are a lot more open to the mythological or the unexplainable. And that probably helped. And again, with the magical practice. But at the time, I didn't make that connection. I thought more about UFOs. But after we talked, I was thinking about David and his fixation on lycanthropes, which are dogmen. He had been putting that intention out. So maybe I was just witnessing some of the response to his intention. That's probably fairly obtuse.
Well, maybe it's not obtuse. You might be right on the money on that. Do you think any of the sounds you heard that drew you outside the night Mr. and Mrs. Dogman paid you a visit could have been made by them?
Here's what I think. I can't think of any particular sound. When I was outside, like I said, they were just poised, especially him. And she didn't move. She was behind him. But he was poised. Just tense muscles poised. But what I will say is the volume of these coyotes was insane. I thought there was like 100 of them all just running crazy all around my house. That's why I got up. I mean, I was angry. I was going to go out there and throw potted plants or, you know, I was just like, you are done, coyotes. Whatever you're doing, you're done. I mean, I was annoyed. And then when I saw Dogman, I gave that up. So the volume just to me, even right now talking about it, since we talked about it the first time, was just ridiculously loud. And so that kind of augments the idea that there's kind of a portal or something magical or mystical going on. Because I'm telling you, Vic, it was crazy loud. It was crazy. And so I don't remember the Dogman making any sound at all. And it didn't seem like there's that many coyotes, like maybe 9 coyotes at the most. I don't know. I wasn't counting coyotes. I was staring at Dogman. But they were just so loud. It was just bizarre. So that's in the audio category. The magnitude of the sound was not natural.
Yeah, sounds like it wasn't. When that one Dogman paid you all those visits, how close was he to you when he would stand underneath that tree?
Oh, about no more than 25 feet. He was close. Yeah, he was close. And our encounters always were the same. It'd be a really dark night. I would go out. I'd be smoking a cigarette. I'd get the vibe. I'd look over there, and there he would be. And at that point, I didn't move. Understand all these encounters. So let's just say conservatively 5 times he's under the tree, and then one night of the migration, whatever. The minute I saw them, I did not move at all. I would just freeze. Now, when he was under the tree, I'd finish my cigarette. So I just very slowly finish my cigarette, drop it in the coffee can, and then I would just back up through the door and leave him alone. And I remember one night I did stay out there in an extraordinary, I guess I had a little shot of courage. I remember one night I just sat there after I finished my cigarette. I just backed up against the side of the house right next to the door. Okay, I'm not that brave. And I thought, who's going to leave first? And I just sat there. I remember looking at him. I remember thinking what was on that night, the one detail I noticed. And now, when he would come and stand underneath the tree, his eyes were not as red as they were that first night. But the angle from the light's totally different. The first night, they were directly west of the house where the barn was. When he came back, he would always be south. So he was more direct in the light. But the one thing I do remember, I know this is again going to seem contrary to a lot of the other encounters I've heard on your show. But I remember sitting there thinking, his fur is beautiful, because I was noticing how the light was falling on it. And, it's so black that it was kind of black with bluish, in it, because it was just so dark. And I remember just sitting there thinking, well, who's going to leave first? And I just studied him. And again, the broad shoulders. And, he definitely had a muzzle. He was a Dogman. He had the same ears, the same tufts. And, his eyes were reddish, but they weren't as just striking as they were that first encounter. And you could see him breathing, and it was a bit labored, but his hands or paws or hands were always the same way. He always kept them curled under. He never lifted. Well, the one hand on the tree now, he could reach around that. That tree was probably a girth of where he was holding it, probably at the base. It was a 10-inch tree. Where he was holding it, it was about a 7-inch tree. So as I think about it, now that hand, I could see it. Now, I'm sure there were claws, but, it was very dark. So I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say anything I can't absolutely scientifically validate. But I know he had an opposable thumb. He did not have 5 fingers, as some people say, because his thumb was where it should be if it was a human hand, and then the four fingers were wrapped around the tree. That I know for sure. The arm was hairy. You could see the hair against the background because, of course, it was the light falling on it makes that kind of stuff glow. You know what I mean? That it makes the hairs kind of glow because they're illuminated. And a hairy arm. But I just remember that one night. It's the only time I did this. Only time I did anything different, and wasn't that different. But I thought, well, who's going to leave first? And so I was looking at him, and I could see him breathing. And his chest was a little more bare. And he definitely was male. There's no point in unpacking all that. I was watching him. And I do remember somebody else on your show, and of course I've listened to a lot. Somebody said he was well groomed. This guy was well groomed. He wasn't matted. He didn't have a bunch of, acorns or leaves or cockleburs or mange or anything. He was well kept. And I just remember thinking his fur was really beautiful. And then I thought, well, this is stupid. You're just asking for something to happen. So then I backed up and went inside the house. But that was the only night that I did anything different. I did probably look at him for 10 minutes. Just in my brain, I thought, well, I wonder if I just sit here, if he will leave. Well, he did not. And I did.
Yeah, that's how I'd pretty much expect it to turn out. You described your encounters as being benign, but you sold that farm. Did you sell it because of your encounters or for another reason?
Well, what happened was David met his wife, moved to Kansas City, and I was out there all by myself for a year. And I just thought, what am I doing? I mean, what the farm became, because when we first moved there, I just got out of Iraq, and we were going to be like organic farmers and like be total hippies and all this stuff. All right, well, I suck at farming, okay? And so do my kids. And so we didn't do any of that. We just lived there. And it was great. And, we did our other things, but we were horrible at farming, just terrible. So, like I said, Abby moved back into Kansas City fairly rapidly. I think she stuck it out for about 6 months. David stuck it out for, 2 or 3 years. I mean, and we had a lot of great times. But what happened was the farm just became the party place. So when I tell you about this UFO encounter scene up to 9 people, I mean, oh my God, 4th of July, 2014 was epic. So all of David's friends, we're talking, 6, 7 young guys in their 20s with all of their firearms and their girlfriends in tow, and my daughter and her fiance would all come out, and we would just have these amazing parties on the farm. But it just became the party place, and everybody came out and they shot their guns and they did all their stuff and drank all their beer and did all their things. And it was great. We had great times. But other than that, it was just me by myself. And here I am, a single woman living out here in the middle of nowhere. And I just thought, I gotta go. So no, it wasn't Dogman that got me out of there. It was just, I thought, well, I'm going to go home to Montana because the kids are established. And I'm just living out here in the middle of nowhere. And so I decided to come back to Montana where my parents and my sisters are and all their families are. So that's why I sold the farm.
I can understand why you made the move then. Well, it's about time for us to get out of here, but before we do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
I do. And this is just one little story from the res. And this goes into Origins of Dogman, which I believe are mystical, but I think they're very real. I think they have children. They live here among us. They leave tracks. They leave feces. I think there's good ones and bad ones. So because I think they're magical or mystical, I'm not saying they're leprechauns. They're very, very real. People are not attacked by leprechauns that I know of. But here's an interesting thing. I think some of them could be skinwalkers. And not only going back to the George Knapp material, but one night, I just recently moved off the reservation. But when I lived on the reservation until 2 months ago for 3 years. And so I was walking because a lot of these reservation schools in Montana have teacher housing because it's very hard to find people that will teach out here. So I'm walking back from the school about 8 o'clock one night and walking up to teacher housing. And out of my periphery, now there's a couple of lights, but it's not really well lit. I saw this tree, quote unquote. And now understand, I'm thinking school, I'm thinking kids, I'm thinking grades, I'm thinking science projects. I'm not thinking Dogman or anything. I saw this tree and I thought that doesn't belong there. I stopped. I know you're starting to maybe pick up on my pattern. When in doubt, freeze. Don't move. So I stopped. I thought that doesn't belong there. And then that tree kind of, the only way I can describe it would be like a watercolor painting. You understand, I've been at school all day. Again, I'm still in the military. This is like 3 years ago. So take drugs off the table. And I certainly wasn't down at school drinking. Tree kind of morphed a little bit. And then it looked like a dog man. It kind of looked like a dog man. And it started walking off. And I froze. And of course, being on the res, I thought, skinwalker. Do not make eye contact with the skinwalker. And I can, all the goosebumps. I just froze. And it moved off and just disappeared. But I thought it was interesting. Now, I don't know about skinwalkers. I know about, hunt for the skinwalker on the ranch in Utah. Native peoples tell you what they tell you, and they've told me a lot of interesting things over the years. But this topic has never really come up, and I wouldn't bring it up unless they bring it up, and I don't think they will. But I knew what it was, and I thought it was interesting that when it morphed from its disguise into a moving form, that it looked like a dog man. And so I can't help but think some of these dog men could very well be skinwalkers. Individuals that have mastered some kind of magical art of transmutation, and they can move in that form, which of course dovetails into all the werewolf stuff. But I kind of want to avoid that because being a Wiccan, that seems so stereotypical. But I'm just telling you, that was an odd experience. And after the pre-interview, I was thinking about that. And I just remember thinking at the time, because I didn't look at it. Once it started moving, I didn't move a muscle. I just let it move out of view because I was like, don't mess with this. This is not something that I need to tamper with. But I just trying to capture my feelings and my thoughts. My feelings were, do not mess with this. This is a different kind of thing, and it's trouble. But I noted that as it moved like a dog man. And that's all I'm going to say. Like I said, that's why I don't want to talk about the tribe and all that, where I'm at, because I don't want to say anything about that, because I don't want anybody saying, oh, well, Don said that there's skinwalkers on our reservation, blah, blah, blah. I'm just telling you that's what I experienced. My assumption was it was a skinwalker, and I thought it was interesting that it resembled a dog man. Having had seen dog men, it looked like a dog man. So that's the only thing. So I guess the listeners, as they think about where these dogmen come from, I think some dogmen may honestly be modern day skinwalkers.
Well, thank goodness it headed the other direction.
Oh, God, yes.
Yeah, let's just play the glad game. Well, Don, I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing those experiences with us. I really do appreciate it.
Well, like I said, it's probably boring, but thank you for what you're doing. This conversation needs to be had. We all need to be talking to each other, because if you think about all of the people that have had these experiences, oh my God, how could anybody deny that dogmen are real?
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I think it's a further reach to try and rule their existence out than just to accept the fact that, yeah, they're here, they're real. Well, thanks again so much. Have a great night. If you've had a dogman encounter of your own and would like to speak with me, whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. I'd love to hear from you.